Welcome to Eight Sided Freaks. This is Vendetta Sports Media. This is the MMA show. And today we've got two cards, one to recap and one to slightly preview. Recap is going to be Cannonier versus Nassourdine Imavov. We're going to talk about the main event, the co-main event, and the feature bout. So 3 fights. We'll provide our final thoughts on the rest of the card. Then we're just going to touch on the main event for this upcoming card because it's not a great card, so we're just touching on the main event, final thoughts as well. And then we're going to touch on some news at the end of the show, some counter news, and then one fight was announced. So that is the plan for today. And we will start right at the top with Cannonier versus Nassourdine Imavov last week at UFC Louisville. And I feel like we should start at the stoppage, because that is the most discussed aspect of this. So let's start there. What'd you guys make of the stoppage? Anthony, we can send it over to you first.
Yeah, I mean, definitely in real time, I was leaning early stoppage, and then I think when you get to see the replays, it definitely looks like an early stoppage. I get the whole, running back kind of twice in the same like 10, 15-second span isn't the best look, but I felt that like he reestablished himself and like kind of reset both times. And then, like you had mentioned when it was happening, high guard the whole time, like was still completely, I feel like, intelligently defending himself, even through back. Um, and I guess, Imavov was kind of swarming him, so good for him, though, to put the pressure on the ref. But yeah, I think just Herzog, who I think's the best ref maybe in the UFC, just missed that one and messed it up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, he was stumbling back and the pressure was going towards him. And I think Imanov might have finished him anyway in that round. That's an aspect I have like, okay, maybe it was the right thing in the ultimate scheme of things, but I think it was still too early. Cannonier still looked like he was trying to defend, still looked like he was doing fighting moves and motions. So, from that aspect, it's a little early, but I think the result was almost inevitable at that point. I mean, Imanov still had a whole nother round to get a finish if he had there.
Yeah. I think it was early. I think the stoppage in the main event was pretty bad. And just for Cannonier, like he's hurt and he was wobbled. Like there's no doubt about that. But what frustrates me is that he landed a counter like 2 seconds before Herzog stopped the fight. And it's like, to me, landing a clean counter right hand is a pretty good form of intelligently defending yourself. And he puts his hands up and circles off, and that's what he was doing the whole fight to defend himself as well. So I think it's weird when the fight is stopped when you're defending yourself the same way you were defending yourself for the 3 rounds before he got hurt. So to me, those two things aren't really enough to stop the fight. So I think it was pretty early and pretty bad. And it sucks for Cannonier, who's 40, and who knows what the rest of his career is going to look like now. That was a fight he really needed to win. The other thing I want to add is that I don't know how that fight plays out afterwards. Cannonier was up 2-1. But one thing that I'll say is I've seen Imavov have people hurt, swarm them like that, not get the finish, and then gas out. And we've seen Cannonier get hurt and come back without getting finished. Against Robert Whitaker, he got hurt in the 3rd round, didn't get finished. Against Brunson, he got dropped in the 1st round, won in the 2nd round. So in those 2 examples, he wins 1, loses 1. So it's not to say he would have went on to win. It's not to say Imavov wouldn't have went on to win himself. It's just I think we didn't see a real conclusion of the fight, which I think is what's frustrating me about this situation.
I agree. That's the toughest thing is that he's 40, and he was already on a little bit of a run, and yeah, he was up 2-1, or I had it 2-1. But yeah, it is tough too. It's funny because Imavov. It's wild that Imavov wasn't able to finish Delice, right? Did that fight go to decision? And
Yeah.
I mean, he had him rocked a couple times and stuff, and definitely swarmed him and kept the pressure on him the whole time. And then compared to a fight like against Whitaker, when Cannonier was finally finished. I mean, he did the run back thing, but he fully fell and then got hit with like 15 shots after a ground and pound. So yeah, I agree. I feel like we were robbed of a true conclusion because while I don't disagree, that fight very well could have ended in the next 20 seconds after that. Like you said, both ways, it feels like there was just more on the table, and it still could have. It was still pretty up in the air a little bit based on other past fights.
Yeah, and one more thing that I'll add is like the fight itself, I thought was a great fight. Like it was a really good fight. It's not like it was, some crap fight and that was the first decent shot that landed all fight. It was a very good fight, and both guys did some things that impressed me. I thought Imavov's cardio looked miles better than it ever had. I thought his timing was looking good. I thought Imavov looked really good, and it sucks that this is kind of how the fight looks for him. Obviously sucks for Cannonier as well, since he's 40. You don't know where he's going to go. But for Imavov was looking, this was a big opportunity for him. And, if that goes 20 seconds longer and he puts Cannonier out cold, now we're having a much different discussion. So it kind of sucks for both guys as well. And Imavov looked good, and Cannonier did some great things and landed some shots. So I want to give both those guys credit for having a good fight. And the next thing I want to ask is, do you want to see a rematch for these guys, or would you rather see these two go in different directions in terms of matchmaking? Jerry, we can throw that one over to you first.
And I don't think we need a rematch, mostly for the Jared Cannonier side of things, where he is 40. If he wants to make one more run to the belt, or I don't know how long he has left to fight, I don't think rematching a guy, maybe it'll help you if you beat him, but I think he might look to go and beat another top guy. Like, say something happens in Hamzat and Robert Whitaker, fight one of them after that fight. I think there's other options. Also, other options for Imavov, who we're still waiting on any news of DDP and Israel Adesanya if they are actually going to fight. Sean Strickland said he's sitting out. Robert Whitaker and Hamzat fight in 2 weeks' time. So maybe the winner of that against Imavov for maybe another title eliminator kind of thing. But it's this division is now getting stacks a little backed up at the top, and these guys are all going to have to start fighting each other. So I don't think there's a need for a rematch.
Yeah, I agree. It's tough. The only reason is like if a rematch would be to like the first fight in a sense didn't happen. Hopefully like clean slate, but that's purely for Cannonier just being 40 to try to like because that loss really might just ultimately screw him over. But I think I don't know. There's some other fights to make too. I think Imavov, it's tough. I think he maybe could have got the complete knockout. I think he really looked good and competitive in that fight. So I think it's a little unfair to him to make him do a rematch. But overall, I wouldn't be like you said. I was really enjoying that fight. I wouldn't be mad at having to watch it again. But I think they probably should. That was just unfortunate ref stoppage. I think you should probably continue with the division and make other fights.
Yeah, I can see both sides of this one. I'm not gonna act like I have a like seriously like foot in the ground opinion. Because I see both sides. Like if they book this fight again, put it in Paris, like I'd be really happy with that. I think that's a great matchup. And it also kind of depends where else you want to go with the division. Like, are you going to put the winner of Hamzat and Whitaker on ice? And they fight for the title? Like, if that's the case, that changes things. Are you going to put them on ice and they're going to fight for the title after Strickland or before Strickland, or Strickland actually has to fight again? Like, I think there's so many what ifs with like the top, we'll say top two contenders. And one of those is going to be Sean, and the other is going to be the winner of the Whitaker and Chimaev fight. So I think there's so many different outcomes that you just don't really know what the UFC is going to do. It's just kind of hard to put your foot in the ground and say they should book this again when you don't really know who's going to be on the board. But I wouldn't hate it. Personally, I just hope that Cannonier isn't like pushed too far down in terms of the middleweight title picture. Like, I don't think this should be, oh, Cannonier lost, so let's, give him every single tough prospect imaginable. Like, I think he should still be considered one of the better guys. in this division. I just think you should also include Imavov in those conversations when they're happening. I will say one fight that I do think is really appealing would be Cannonier and Paulo Costa. I know that's a little bit further down than what I just said for Cannonier, but I do think that makes a level of sense. Like Costa, he beats Costa, then you give him a, tough guy again right after, and then the title's been contested a couple times, so I think that may work out. So I think Costa is a name that would make sense for Cannonier if they decide to go other directions.
Especially since they haven't fought each other before, I don't believe that it gives us a fresh matchup, something good to look into.
Yeah. That's the nice thing about Paulo not fighting that often is that anytime there's a middleweight, you can be like, I'd like to see him fight Paulo. Like, that is kind of clutch that obviously I'd like to see him fight more, but it's nice you have that little trick card in your back pocket.
I have a question on the Paulo Costa mention. Do you think he deserves to still fight the number 5 ranked guy in the division after the performance he just put up at 302 against Sean Strickland, where he was going backwards the whole time? Don't get me wrong, Sean Strickland, former champ, number 1 ranked contender, but I don't know what to expect from Paulo Costa because it just seems like he's beating guys who are nobodies and getting beat by everybody else.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, he only fights so infrequently, but he only loses once a year. So he still has the trick of being like in that top 5. Or you people will still look at him like he's, a great name to have. But yeah, if he only loses once a year, he can't really get tanked too bad.
I would say I'd be fine with the Cannonier fight simply because it's fun. Like, maybe he doesn't deserve the Cannonier fight.
But why
and
not?
like, I'd be open to hearing that. But I think it's fun enough to where I'd look past it.
Oh.
Like, if it's not Cannonier, I think you should probably throw Paulo to the side or to the, around the 10 spot, like a Hermanson or a Delice or someone like that. But, so from a general viewpoint, I do think he should drop. I agree with what you're saying there.
Yeah. I still wish we had gotten the Hamzat and Costa fight. That's the one that in this division that I think would have been fun.
Yeah, if Chimaev loses to Whitaker, I can almost guarantee that I say they should book that fight on the podcast after that. Those fights happen when we're recapping those. I almost guarantee I pulled the Costa card again. All right. Anything else here on this main event? It's kind of a weird one, so I want to make sure we're not missing anything that you guys have that you want to get off your chest.
No, I just wanted to say that I had a Cannonier Rosas lay, and then I took your 2 best bets. I took the unders, both of them hit. I had another pick before that. I think it was the spinning elbow knockout, nice. And then I should have hedged and took Imavov instead. I took over 3.5. So the early stoppage absolutely killed me. That was because that was a 4-pick parlay right there. Yeah, so that was. I was not a happy camper watching that play out, and I was rooting for Cannonier too. So
that's tough. I was fortunate enough to where my bets on the main event were I had some Cannonier late props, but I don't put much on late props. It's silly to put a bunch on those. But the 2 actual bets I had were Cannonier and the under 4.5. So I basically just wiped clean because they were both plus money. So the stoppage didn't really affect me too much betting-wise, but I was like, this sucks. But one of the 2 hit off the way of the stoppage, so I was on the opposite end of that. I had a little bit more good luck on that. So.
Yeah. So it's not too tough. You're like, all
right. That is unfortunate, though, to be on the wrong side of that over 3.5, because that was on the verge of it.
It was like a minute, yeah. So it would have been tough to see. I would have been sweating to see if Cannonier would. But that's what sucks about that early stoppage, because I generally kind of didn't know which way it was gonna go, because I could see him surviving, or maybe Imavov finds the shot. But as is the UFC, it happens sometimes.
Yeah, and then transitioning to the co-main event, this one. Speaking of shockers, I mean, I wasn't really expecting Dominick Reyes to get back in the win column. I know that we at least had some. I don't know who all picked Reyes in the preview. I did not, but I know. I think Anthony, you did, and I think Garrett might have. I don't remember off the top of my head, but
I want to say I do remember someone else going with me, and I think it was probably Captain. I think I remember seeing it.
So I know I'm pretty sure I went with Justin or with Jacoby. So.
Yeah. So good call on that one. Personally, I did not. I thought Reyes had a chance. Like I didn't bet Jacoby or parlay Jacoby or anything crazy like that. But Reyes can still throw. I was just like, oh well, his chin's toast. But it did not get to that point. He landed some shots. Knocks out Jacoby in the first round. Anthony, what'd you make of Reyes' performance?
I mean, I was very excited. I just have a thing of when like he a tightly contested fight with John Jones, like arguably beat him, and I get there's mountaintops and cliffs in this, in the fight game, and sometimes if you fall off completely, and there's no getting back. But I just think when you're able to reach that level of talent and perform that well, you should win, right? Like, and then and especially in the higher weight classes, knockout streaks can happen and stuff. And he finally took time off, which I thought was huge. So I was banking on a performance like this, and like you said in your article in your preview. I mean, he had methods of winning and stuff, and he was good. It was just the chin was suspect, and I was hoping that he would just finally bounce back, and I was lucky enough he did. I also do think, like I said, there's a drop in competition compared to who he's been fighting. And while I actually like Jacoby, I just don't think I think he's like a perfectly like C fighter, like just very average. And I think Dominick Reyes, while probably not A or anything anymore, still think he's an above average fighter. So I liked the movement, I liked the hands. He seemed also after taking that break and obviously regaining his chin a little bit, hopefully his physical health. He seemed to be in a better place mentally, which I also think is important, especially if you go on a 3 knockout slide. So I was super happy with the win.
Yeah, it was awesome to see him get back there because I mean, it really wasn't that long ago. It's 4 years that he fought John Jones and lost in that title fight. Whether you think he actually lost and all that otherwise, but it was given the L for it. And 3 straight knockouts, like you said, it's been really rough for him in the last few years, and it's awesome to see him get a finish in the way he did, just getting him done really quickly in that first round.
Yeah, and I don't know that well, I'm not going to say that. I should say I don't think he's going to be, fighting for the belt or anything like that, but I just think like offensively, Jacoby can still beat people. Like what's the difference between Johnny Walker and Dominick Reyes right now? Like they're both guys who are exciting and don't have good chins, but they will put your lights out. Like I don't think there's that big of a difference in between those two. It's just Johnny Walker, his bad knockout losses have a win sandwich between them. And if Johnny Walker would have fought the 3 guys that Reyes did back to back to back, there's a chance he gets knocked out like that back to back to back. So I still think there's a place for Reyes in this division, especially in the Walker's at 7 right now. So in this 7 to 15 range, he'll probably go up and down, lose some, win some. But, I mean, there are some fun matchups you can make for him because he has been sidelined and only fought the top 5 guys, really. So it's like there's still a lot you can do with Reyes. Like, he hasn't fought Anthony Smith.
Yep.
He hasn't fought Alonzo Menafield. He did fight Ryan Spann, and not a great loss there, but get caught by Ryan Spann. Like, there's a lot of guys who lose to Ryan Spann if he lands that shot. So, Johnny Walker is a decent fight. Like, Volkan Ozdemir, like the loser of that matchup. There's like a lot of things you can do with Reyes. So, I'm not ready to count him out, and I still think there are some fun things you can do with him.
Absolutely. I was thinking that Anthony Smith test for Dominick Reyes. I think
See where he's at.
Anytime there's a light heavyweight fight, doesn't matter what the ranking is, Anthony Smith comes into our conversation one way or another.
It always makes sense somehow.
Yeah, it does. Yeah,
every single time you can justify it.
Yeah, it's not like we're just pulling his name out. It always does make sense. For either the winner or the loser has to do the Anthony Smith test. Other one, like Khalil Roundtree, now that he doesn't have that fight with Jalen Turner or Jamal Hill. Like maybe he goes down ranking and fights Reyes. That'd be an interesting one, but it's also one that I'm scared Reyes might get.
Yeah, I like how we talk about his chin and then we're talking about Johnny Walker and Khalil Roundtree.
Yeah,
But I mean, because he had lost to Jan, who was a world beater at that time, right? He was
Mhm.
kind of on his hot streak, and then Jiri, like never gonna. But
and that one was nasty.
that one was bad. It was the Ryan Spann knockout
And
is when I was like, oh god, we're getting starched by Spann off. I think it was off like a jab too, which was the scary thing. But
the two
um,
things I want to add to what you just said real quick, he landed shots in both those Yuri and Span fights. Like he was not like shelling up and was like non-offensive. He was throwing and landing in both those fights. I just want to say that because a lot of people just remember those as him getting baptized, which he did on both occasions. But before he gets baptized, both of those are entertaining fights, and he lands shots. So I just want to add that onto those two fights.
yeah, I was just, and then, well, that's the other reason I kind of was still holding out, hoping for a bounce back, is because it's not like he looked completely washed. It just looked like his chin was gone for some reason, and it shouldn't have been. After I think being undefeated and then losing a decision to John, it doesn't make sense that you lose it immediately after two knockouts. But I think the time off is exactly what he needed. And to be fair, I know Jacoby's not necessarily like a knockout artist, but he definitely can. He's a good striker though in his own right. But he was actually getting him, I think, a little bit towards the end before the left counter happened. But he was Jacoby was kind of getting Reyes with strikes and putting it on him, but he stayed level headed, and yeah, luckily his chin seemed to be better and got his little left hook that he always seems to find.
I wanted to bring up because you're talking about like the chins of everybody. Justin Jacoby had been knocked out once in his entire MMA career, never in the UFC. This came back in 2014 again, Bellator. So this guy is a guy that doesn't get knocked out very often. Sure, he's 36 now, but seeing Dominick Reyes come in there and knock him out the way he did shows that the power's still there. It's just the question of is his chin going to keep hanging up? Because if it does, he might be a little not necessarily a title challenger, but he can definitely contend in that 5, 7 to 10 range.
Yeah, and I'll just say if you're fighting Dominick Reyes, be careful. Like you can't just go, I'm gonna rush in and clip you on your busted chin. Like you may be the one getting clipped bad. So I'll just say that if you're anyone who's watching that may fight Dominick Reyes, be
Yeah.
careful. So that should be noted.
Also, I did want to say one
All
thing.
right.
I thought, 'cause, like we know that, like Reyes obviously was a former football player, collegiate, because they hyped that up a bunch. The John Jones fight, that he's an athlete. Did not know Jacoby was a former quarterback in college. That's kind of dope. So I just thought that was funny.
That's a funny one. D2 quarterback turned kickboxer, isn't it? I don't think that's a very rare career path. I don't think that's a
Exactly.
common career path. My bad. All right, co-main event, also not a common career path. 19-year-old Raul Rosas Jr. fighting in the UFC. He goes out there, gets a submission in the second round over Ricky Turcios. What do you guys make of Rosas's performance? Anthony, you can go ahead and lead us off.
I mean, it's about what I feel like everyone expected. It was kind of, he was just gonna chase the takedowns and stuff. I wish he would have striked a little bit more too, but I know maybe with Tercios. But yeah, I mean, he was good cardio, kept chasing the takedowns, shot a couple good ones too. Tercios gave him a little bit of a better look on the ground too at times, which is good compared to Rosas's other fights, but. I thought he defended well on that once rear naked choke he almost got caught in, and then finished it with a rear naked choke, right?
Yep.
So I thought overall, I think he's doing what he needs to do with the level of competition he's facing, but it's about time for him to take take a jump. I know he kind of stumbled a little bit on that first one with Rodriguez, but I mean he's done the same thing twice now. It seems like so. It's time to test him again.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I wasn't able to watch this fight, but I saw some of the highlights, and it looked like still he's just very much, I'm going to take you to the ground, and I'm going to just get you out of there or down there. Same thing you said, Anthony. I would like to see him strike a little bit more. Also, I still know his cardio is good at low elevation. We'll see what happens if he ever gets booked somewhere else again, because we saw what happened last time that happened. So that's still in the back of my mind of, okay, something to watch out for. Maybe his cardio isn't as good. Maybe there was something going on with him at that point. I'm not in the room. I don't know. But it's one of those things that I want to see him keep succeeding, and I do want to see a little step up in competition, but I don't think it needs to be anything too drastic yet, because the UFC has something here and they don't want to ruin it, because otherwise it could be similar to the Chase Hooper experiment, where now Chase Hooper's looking good again, or better at least, but he went in a rough patch for a second there because they just rushed him.
Yeah, I have a lot of similar thoughts as to you guys. It was good for what it was, right? It wasn't like this performance that makes me go, "Oh, this guy's gonna be a champ," this or that, but like he's doing the right things, and like that's all I really ask of him from like a viewing perspective at 19. Like things could be going a lot worse. It seems that he's doing the right thing, so he deserves credit for that. The one thing that does bother me about Raul Rosas Jr., this is not a dig at him at all, but I feel like a lot of people see him do this, and they see him knock out Terrence Mitchell, and they see him submit rookie Turcios, and now all of a sudden we have to pretend like this guy is one of the best fighters in the world. It's like we don't have to do that. You can say like Terrence Mitchell's a guy who fought in Alaska FC his entire career, and every time he fights outside of Alaska FC, he gets slaughtered. Like, that's okay to say. That doesn't mean it wasn't a good win for a 19-year-old in the UFC. He was fighting a regional level guy. Most 19-year-olds are fighting regional MMA. You know, Ricky Turcios, not a great UFC fighter. He's a guy, but he is a guy who, you know, has some like skills on the ground, but it was still a good matchup where Turcios can go get his takedowns because he doesn't have that good at takedown defense. And that allows Rosas to work his BJJ. It's like we can admit these things while giving him credit. I feel like a lot of people just want to, oh, here's this 19-year-old. Like, that's almost unfair to him.
Yeah.
That when the UFC gives him these nice matchups that now we have to pretend he should be fighting Petr Yan. It's like, no. Let him continue the path he's on, and maybe we can test him against a little bit tougher guys. But as of right now, I think, you know, maybe a year or 2 years of doing what he's doing now of, hey, this guy's not great, but, you know, he's a 19-year-old who should be fighting regionally. So I think that's where we're at with Rosas right now. But, you know, you don't know where he's going to go in 5 years. You know, maybe he, you know, fills out, moves to 45, improves his striking. There's a lot of places this could go. So I'm just interested to watch that journey for him, because it is very interesting to see how a fighter can progress once they're already in the UFC.
Yeah. Oh, I was just gonna say I 100% agree, because like talking about this fight reminds me of like a Bo Nickel fight of like, yeah, he did what he was supposed to do. I mean, like it went how you expected, or even some early Chimaev fights, but there's a huge difference in the dominance, the level of dominance in the wrestling between you know, a Bo Nickel and a Chimaev. It's just not there with Rosas right now, which is fine. Like you were saying, he is 19, so you know, I agree. I'm excited, and I think it is perfect. They should still, because when's that Sphere coming in September or August?
Yep. September.
Right. So glad that he got another win, so they could save him for that, and you know, be a little cash cow, because he will be a good name. I mean, it's at least good that people are drawn to him in a sense, though, because that's always someone that you can put on a card and get a little bit excited about.
Yeah, I mean, he's a 19-year-old fighting the third, or like the featured bout on guys who have fought, or guy who's fought for the title before card. So it's the fact that they want him out there and want him on the main card sort of things. It means that they're doing something right with him, and he will be a star at some point. It's just a matter of not rushing, taking your time and working your way up to it. Because it's not many 19-year-olds you'd see beating any professional MMA fighters. So everything he's doing is kind of special and cool to see.
Mm-hmm. Last thing I'll add, I don't remember who brought up Chase Hooper earlier. You said that, but
Yeah.
the one thing I will add on to that is I think that's a good point, and I think the UFC can learn lessons about what went wrong with Hooper. Like, Hooper went out there and ate some damage in some of his losses early in his career, and you don't really need Raul to go through that. Another jiu-jitsu guy getting in the UFC at an early stage, and the loss he took didn't really eat that much damage against Rodriguez. He just got out grappled. So I think they can learn some lessons from what they went through with Hooper and now kind of readjust how they're going to work with Rosas based off what they already went through. So,
And then I had two quick things. One is I think people forget how careful they were with O'Malley before he became the biggest star, because he was literally spoon-fed the softest, most safest competition for a while until eventually, when he first got that big jump against Jan, and then he just showed you he deserved to be there. But I think, if they really do take their time with someone and that they believe can reach that superstar status, I don't doubt that, that person could maybe make it. And then the second thing I wanted to say, I don't know, before we get off the fight, did you see that Turcios says F you, straight head kicks, no glove tap? I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Is that how the fight started?
Yes.
yeah, insane. Absolutely insane. It looked like Ricky Turcios was the 19-year-old.
Yes.
Like, Ricky Turcios was acting like the 19-year-old, and Raul Rosas was acting like the 30-year-old. Like, that's the way that I viewed
Ricky Turcios walked up, said F you, and then threw a head kick at Rosas?
Yeah. Rosas was going for the glove touch. Ricky hit him with the fuck you, no glove touch, and kicks him.
I was confused because the camera was on Rosas, and it's like showing him like going to fist bump. It turns, and Turcios is just standing there, goes F you, and then like I was like, did he just say F you? And then before I even could get that thought out, I just see a head kick fly, and I was like, oh god, okay. And then he proceeds to lose to a 19-year-old and get submitted. So it's just like, not the best look.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. All right. Final thoughts on UFC Louisville. I can start us off because I've got one. Carlos Prates goes out there, gets a sick liver shot KO with a knee, very precise knee, right on the liver, drops Radke immediately. I really like Prates. I picked against him in this fight, actually, which I felt really stupid about. After the fact, because then I went back and looked at my Dana White Contender Series rankings from that season, and I had Prates at number 4, and I was like, why the hell did I pick against him when I had him at number 4 out of everybody from that season on Contenders? So probably won't be picking against Prates anytime soon, but he looked really good in that fight. Has looked really good for a while. I'm interested to see what he can do. 2 matchups that he's not beating world beaters, but Radke and Giles, not easy matchups. So credit to Prates. I think he's looked good, and stupid me for picking Radke to beat him, even though I've liked Prates his entire run. So throwing some credit over to Radke, and then some shame over to myself for that one.
I think the one I'll pick was actually right before the 3 we just talked about, the Bruno Ferreira fight. That was a pretty fun one. I know quick, still ended in the first round, but that Stoltzfus was Bruno Ferreira was getting rocked constantly, and I thought not looking good for the level of favorite he was. And then it just seemed like almost on a flip of a switch. I don't know if it was like 3 minutes of just getting worked and losing a lot of exchanges, I thought. And then, he hit him with one shot, and then he, tides turned, and then he was the one putting it all on him, and then gets a nice finish with the cool spinning elbow. And then just the other one, because we should touch on it, but I think a couple of us had picked Julian Marquez. What a fight! That was literally the second punch thrown. That was worse to. No, I picked him, but he was also the first leg of one of my parlays, and And I hadn't picked, like, it was the first leg of anything I had all night, and it was the rest of the card. And then to see the second punch land and knock him out. But props to Zachary Reese, clean shot. I don't know what else to say.
Here's one thing I'll add to that fight. Instead of writing a full preview for that fight, I should have just said, good luck figuring out who wins this fight, and then just left it at that. That would have been a more accurate preview, and it would have saved me the time of writing it. That probably should have been the preview. Good luck figuring out who wins this one, and credit to Reese for going out there and being the one to win. So, I think the loser of that was going to lose in violent fashion, so credit to him.
I was going to say he gets finished by Brundage, TKO'd, and then does that. But I think that even makes more sense, actually, to get finished by Brundage and then your second punch to knock him out.
It was all set up so Brundage could get Bo Nickel at 300. All he knew he needed was one win, so it's all.
That was the big plan.
Cody Brundage is the only one in the UFC playing chess. Everyone else is playing checkers. Cody Brundage is playing chess.
Exactly. Okay, I have two. One's I'll get to in a second, but I have to ask because all four of us on the preview picked Miguel Baez. What happened? Did Soriano just kind of come out and dominate him? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the best Soriano has looked in a while.
He switched divisions, right?
Yeah, one of the things I said in the preview is that I thought his skills were regressing, and he's a college wrestler who doesn't wrestle. I didn't say that in the preview. I kind of alluded to it. But he drops divisions. Cardio is the best it's looked in ages. Wrestled for the first time in a long time. So, I mean, credit to Soriano. I think Baez is also a little mentally broken, with all due respect. Been knocked out a couple times. Tons of skills. But I think some guys, this is the contrast to Reyes. Some guys get knocked out and lose complete confidence in their skills. Reyes didn't. Like, Reyes is the opposite side of that, where he's still going to go in there and throw. I think Baez is the Phil Hawes side of things, where I lost I know I don't have the chin, and now the rest of my game kind of falls apart. That was personally my assessment of this situation.
I'm looking at these stats, and it's like 331 to 22 total strikes, 5 takedowns to 0 for Soriano.
It was mostly all ground and pound.
Okay. Yeah, it was.
We all messed that one up in the predictions.
Well, I'll take it because this is when I tried to get it out quick. This was when I was traveling, and it's so funny because I just knew Soriano. I'd seen him decent, like striking basically. But yeah, he finally wrestled again, and then it was just, I guess, too much for Baeza, who was, I want to say, a -200 favorite, -300 maybe, but
yeah, he was a heavy favorite.
Heavy. So I just thought, Soriano looked good at the new weight. I really suited him, and the fact that he started wrestling again. I will say, though, I think I made a joke about this to one of my friends, is what's worse than getting 300, strikes landed on you, is for Soriano, how do you land 300 strikes on someone and not finish them? I don't get that.
Also very true. I mean, it's a 3-round fight.
In his defense, that probably should have been stopped.
He was. He kept doing the weird thing where he'd go left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, and not really actually load up on a punch. So I don't know if it didn't look too good to the ref.
Fair enough. And then just want to say my other one, because it was history in the UFC, first fight of the night, and this is one of the few I actually was able to watch. But Puja Tomar, first Indian fighter to ever win a UFC fight. So pretty cool for that, history for them.
Yeah, unfortunately, she lost the fight. The judges gave it to her, but I think she lost that fight.
Really?
Yeah.
I was gonna ask if she looked good at all. I didn't get to see the first fight.
It wasn't a pretty fight, but she still got her hand raised. So there's a history aspect. Yes. Doesn't matter what happens; it happens, I guess.
Nevertheless, it is important.
I probably would have scored at 30-27 Dos Santos.
I
don't think Tomar won a round, but hey, that's just me personally. But credit to her, she got the win. I'll give her that one.
Fair enough.
All right. On to this week's card: Tatsuro, Taira, Alex Perez in the main event, and I did not forget about betting odds. I've got it right here, ready to go. Tatsuro Taira minus 180. Alex Perez plus 150. So fairly close, slight lean towards Taira. Taira, 24-year-old prospect, taking a massive step up in competition. He beats Perez. He's probably one away from a title shot, I'd say. That's what it's looking like for Mokaev. So I'd assume the same applies to Taira, especially since Perez has won a fight since Mokaev has beat him. So there's a big fight here. And for Perez, if you can hold off the prospect, get another win, and fight for a third time this year, like it's the best year Perez has had in ages. So lots riding for both of these guys. What do you make of the main event? Jerry, we can throw it over to you first.
I mean, seeing like Taira is a 24-year-old, so this is a very big step up for him, fighting the fifth-ranked guy in the flyweight division. Yeah, if he can get it done, I don't see any reason why he doesn't get a title shot, or maybe even something like a Brandon Moreno or a Royval, one more, and then to do it. Because I'm assuming we can get Pantoja and, well, I guess Mokaev's fight. Who's Mokaev fighting? Fighting Manel Kopp? Who's fighting Manel?
Yes.
That's the one at 304.
Mm-hmm. That'll probably be a title eliminator.
Yeah, so winner of that gets that shot, and then that leaves all those other guys kind of up there. So this is, I think he's 2 wins away. I think he gets this one done, then fights one of these other top contenders and get it that way if he can. But it's going to be interesting because I'm sure I have watched Taira fight, but I don't remember his fights all that much. It's been a while, been to almost 6 months since he last fought, so one of those things.
He gets buried on prelims pretty often.
Yeah, that's the thing.
I believe it's because the time zone is easier for the people in Japan to watch, is why it's been buried on prelims. Because there's been a couple times I've been like, this is like the best or second best fight on this, maybe not best, depending. But there's been a couple times he definitely should have at least been main card. I'll just say that. But he's been buried early on the prelims.
I mean, he's 15-0. He's 15-0 for a reason. He's getting it done. Knockout submissions, kind of can do a little bit of everything, it appears. So should be a fun one because Alex Perez is still a dog at times. He still can prove that. Did that against Nicolau, who I thought he was going to lose that fight to Nicolau. I wasn't sure going into that one, but got it done.
Yeah, well, Perez has been screwed over too with like the 7 fight cancellations and stuff after he finally got his chance at the belt. But I think if anything, just this fight, it's good to see some movement. I know these are towards the back half, but closer to 15. But it's good to see some movement in the division and maybe get a new face up there. Especially with kind of the logjam at the front, but then you have now people are interested in Urseg, and then Mokaev right there. So it's good to just get some new blood in there, and I think overall, yeah, and then like you said, if Perez does get another win, that's about as good as not as good as it's gonna get for him, but yeah, as good as a year that he's had, especially since maybe he fought for the belt like 3-4 years ago. So,
yeah, and I think it's also an interesting fight from like a skills perspective. Like Taira doesn't have a ton of striking. I think his last fight he got the knockout, and that's as best his hands has ever looked. But Perez is a guy like he can wrestle, and he can box, and he will kick your legs. So like to me, Perez isn't like an elite fighter, but like the skills of like takedown defense, boxing, and leg kicks are like those are skills that if you have holes in your game, those are enough skills to put your weaknesses on display and earn the win. Like so, I think that makes it an interesting fight, and I'm interested to see what Taira's cardio looks like. This is his first 5-round fight, and a lot of his fights have not gone the full 3 rounds, or at least multiple of them. So. Taira does have a lot of skills, and I'll probably pick him to win this fight. I think if he can land a takedown, his jiu-jitsu is very, very good, and he can land the submission. But if he can't land the takedown, I think we're going to learn a lot about him, and I'm probably leaning towards the 24-year-old right now. But, I mean, I think this is a pretty close fight. You're muted, Jay.
Well, that was my bad. Well, yeah, it's going to be a very close fight, and I'm excited to see because this is a big fight for both these guys. Flyweight division so weird at the top with obviously Amir Albazi. Don't know when the hell he's ever going to fight again. Same with Kai France. Seems like those guys are always about to fight. Manel Kape's always about to fight, and then something happens. Which is why we've seen Moreno, Pantoja, Royval all fight each other so many times for the belt. It's kind of just been that circle of those three. And I guess throw Steve Erceg in there, but that's because everyone else was out or not able to fight, I think, because no one else has fought.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This division is just a mess, and I think Taira can bring some more entertainment and more contenders up here.
Yeah, I think the influx of names into this division is a positive regardless. Like, fresh matchups at a minimum, I think, is always a positive for flyweight.
Exactly. That's what I was saying. If anything, that'll be like the silver lining of it.
Mm-hmm. All right. Final thoughts on UFC Vegas 93, I believe this weekend is. I let us off last time, so I can go last. Jerry, how about you lead us off for final thoughts on this upcoming card?
One guy I just like watching, and I don't know if it's because I went to ASU and this guy's name is spelled ASU, so that's something I found funny. But Almabayev, 2-0 in the UFC, 19-2 overall. He's fighting, what is it? I know he's fighting Jose Johnson. Not anything too crazy of a fight, but he's just a guy I like watching, so I'll tune in for that one for sure.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting fight as well. Jose Johnson, 6 foot tall, moving down from bantamweight to flyweight for this fight. First fight at flyweight as a guy who is 6 feet tall. So that's actually going to be quite the interesting fight from outside of the skills perspective, just the pure size of it.
Especially considering Alamabayev is more of a submission guy, so getting him down will be getting in reach to get a takedown might be a little difficult.
I do not have much. This card is pretty barren. I know. I think he's only fought once. I was just looking at it because I hadn't seen that name in a while. But Brady Highstand was Ultimate Fighter, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he's looks like he was 1-0 after that. So good to see him because Brad Katona just fought on the last card, and he was also on that same season, I believe.
Yep.
So I was trying to keep it.
Highstand was 29 with Ortega and Volkanovski.
Okay.
He was on the Brian Battle season.
Yeah. See, that's I forget because I think that was one of the first ones I had watched in a while, so I get it.
That was the first one back. That was the return.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Actually, I did not watch the new episode of the one that just came out, by the way, the Ultimate Fighter with Valentina and Grasso.
It's still the Ultimate Fighter, I'll tell you that.
Okay. Nothing changed. They don't ever reinvent the wheel on that show.
Nope. It's they did we're gonna pick the fighters, and they showed like 3 minutes of footage, and they pick fighters. It's like, can we get some more insight into why we're picking who we're picking? Like, why is picking the teams like a 5-minute video part of the episode? This should be a big ordeal. This is important.
The older seasons where they had all these preliminary fights just to be able to be selected. You got to watch these guys. You got to see like the coaches kind of go in more depth. Sure, it was an hour 45 long episode, but it's an hour 45. You got to see about 20 different fights. It's sign me up for that for the first episode every time over what we have now.
Yeah, I love seeing guys make at-home videos of here's me and my girlfriend cooking in the kitchen. It's like great. Yeah. Unique. I haven't seen this 15 times.
I want to see someone fighting a kangaroo. I do like that it's very foreign or like worldwide. That's cool. But something else.
Yeah. My final thought, I'll throw 2 out there. Ikram Aliskerov is fairly big name prospect, 2-0 in the UFC, fighting Antonio Trocali. Probably going to win in the first round by finish, and people are going to call him a future champion, even though he's fighting a guy that should not be in the UFC. But hey, that's at least something notable because of the names on this card. And then Josh Van on the prelims. No idea why this guy's on the prelims when Tagir Ulanbekov is one of the 3 ranked fights, Josh Van versus Tagir Ulanbekov. No clue how you have a card with 3 ranked fighters and one of them is on the prelims. Just logistically doesn't make much sense to me, but Ulanbekov, legit grappler. Josh Van, a legit boxer. And I think he is 22. And if we can get Josh Van in those rankings, flyweight division is going to get very exciting quickly. So those are my 2 final thoughts. And let's just touch up on some news stories here as we conclude the show. Conor McGregor looks like he's fighting, has not pulled out of UFC 303 yet. We talked about that a little bit last week, and only positive things have been said since. Ariel Helwani basically said it's looking optimistic the fight's going to happen. It's been, I think, a week since then. We have not seen a cancellation. The UFC has been running ads for the fight. UFC has been posting video clips, posting promos. So pretty sure that we are getting this fight. Just want to throw that out there, considering we talked about the possibility of it getting canceled last week. I don't really have any specific questions for you guys, but I do want to open the floor to provide your opinions if you have any on this Conor press conference cancellation saga.
I mean, since the season of The Ultimate Fighter was announced and they're like, oh yeah, these 2 guys are going to fight, I've had something that I just don't see this fight happening. Now we're getting closer, and then I saw the news of, the press conference in Dublin's canceled, especially after Dana said the day before, 2 days before, oh, yep, I'm getting ready to fly out tonight, which can be awesome. You guys aren't going to want to miss this, and hyping it up. That didn't seem good to me. I don't know what was really happening. There's a lot of theories of, Conor hurt himself. Conor did something at a party. It's all Conor's side. No one really cares that Michael Chandler's involved, which not surprising. It is a McGregor fight, but there's never any news of, maybe Michael Chandler's done something. No, everyone just assumes it's Conor, so that's just something that's not surprising to me, but also funny.
Yeah, because Chandler also stopped with the cryptic posts, so that's a better sign too that the fight's happening. But I mean, Chandler's put his career on hold a little bit just for this one fight, so you best believe he's not doing anything to ruin it. Matter of fact, if this fight gets canceled, someone might need to check on him.
I don't really have much, to be honest with you guys. I think the fight is happening. I'm on the completely opposite side of the spectrum. I was a little bit worried and doubtful at times, but I think once it was officially announced, I've been pretty I think it's going to happen. So I think we're in a good spot. So I think I'm on the more optimistic side. Maybe it's delusion, maybe it's optimism. I don't know, but I do think we are getting the fight on the 29th. So that's just my opinion, and if not, they may have to throw some money around to get a new pay-per-view main event. So, and Conor's never pulled out of a fight before, so I do think that is a positive.
Well,
he doesn't have to worry about USADA.
Yeah. I was guessing that's something else that I saw or read reports about, is that they were asking around for possible other replacements, which big red flag in any fight is when it seems like they're asking to try and find someone to fix it.
Mm-hmm. My opinion is that it was probably a minor injury, and they didn't know whether they were going to have to cancel the fight. And if they did have to cancel it, they were going to need to find someone ASAP. So they probably just immediately started calling, and then Conor eventually came back and said, "Nah, I'm good to fight." So that was, I think, what went down. So take that for what it is. Maybe that hurts the fight. Maybe it doesn't. We'll have to wait and see. All right. This next piece of news actually popped into my head during the show. So I'm dropping this on you guys out of nowhere. So my apologies for that, but I do think it's actually quite important. And if you guys don't have a big thought on it, that's fine as well, since I'm dropping it on you out of nowhere. UFC signed Ryzen bantamweight champion Kai Asukara over the weekend. Asakura is one of the better fighters that's not in the UFC. I don't have his record pulled up, but
He's
very good.
He's 21-4. I was actually thinking of I was going to bring that up after.
Yeah, 21-4 and rising bantamweight champion. He has some wins over some notable names. I believe he split 1-1 with Manel Kape, and he split 1-1 with Kyoji Horiguchi. There was a lot of talk that Horiguchi was going to be the guy that made it to the UFC, but they actually surprised with Kai Asukara. And from what I've seen, I'll be honest, I haven't sat down and watched full fights, right? I'm not going to pretend that I have. But from what I have seen, seems to be a fairly entertaining guy. I don't know what opinions you guys have on him as a fighter, but what do you guys make of the UFC adding to the bantamweight division with a guy who seemingly is going to come in and going to be fighting in the top 5, top 10? Jerry, since you thought about bringing this up, we can swing it over to you first.
I mean, a super stacked division at the top is getting even more stacked in this. And fortunately for Kai Asukara, his last fight, it was his second fight of the same night. So he's not going to be having to fight two guys in one night. Might benefit him in the long run, might help him out a lot, I would assume so. But this guy knows what he's doing, it seems, and he's fighting on the biggest stages in Japanese MMA. He's fighting for the championship, whether he's winning it, losing it, vacant. He's always fighting, and the spotlight's around him. Got some nasty knockouts. I mean, knees to the body. Had a knee and a soccer kick knockout, I want to say. It's not in those reported. But I'm curious to see how he matches up with the guys like Piotr Yan, if he ends up fighting for the belt, Sean O'Malley, Corey Sandhagen, that kind of area of fighters. Curious to see who they would have him fight first as well.
Yeah, from fans, I think I already saw like the Yan matchup, but getting bounced around a little bit. But overall, I think top tier talent is top tier talent wherever it's at. So I think I'm excited if you just look at Michael Venom Page, Michael Chandler, all the way even back a couple years ago to Van Askren and stuff. Whenever you get the top talent from other promotions, it always seems to work out in a sense, spices up the division. You get some fun fights. You just get a whole nother name, with a whole bunch of other matchups to make. So overall, I think it's exciting.
Yeah, and I think the UFC is very selective with who they decide to sign and who they don't. Saladin Parnas fights over in KSW. He's their I believe he's been their featherweight and lightweight champion. I don't know exactly what he holds at this moment, but he is very, very good. Could compete at the UFC level, but he's a little bit more of, I'm going to kick you in the leg. I'm going to stay technical. I'm not going to, go to war. Meanwhile, the UFC goes, all right, we'll sign Michael Chandler. We'll sign Michael Venom Page. We'll sign guys like that. And I think that's one thing that should be noted whenever the UFC signs. So we'll sign Kayla Harrison. I think the UFC is very particular with who they sign from other promotions. And I think it's a good thing whenever you see them sign someone because you kind of know, like, all right, they signed him for a reason, right? And it is the bantamweight division, and there is no bad matchups, really. This is my favorite thing about the bantamweight division is you could blindly pick two guys. Just I'm going to close my eyes, pull two names out of a hat. Chances are you got a fun fight. Like, it's a really hard division to mess up matchmaking, and now we're just throwing another fun guy in there. No complaints from me. It just makes a deep, exciting division in the UFC deeper and more exciting. Maybe the best division, may not be the best division. Regardless, I'm excited. I won't be complaining at all. All right. Last piece of news. We don't have to go as deep into this, but we have reports that Sean Brady and Gilbert Burns will be fighting in August in a fight night main event. What do you guys make of this matchup and this fight and it being a fight night headliner? Anthony, we can swing it over to you first this time.
Overall, I think it's a fun matchup. I can't remember what was Sean Brady's last fight.
He choked out Kelvin Gastelum, I believe.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. But yeah, I think Sean Brady's one. I think people are higher on him than I am of him, and that's nothing. It's not that I don't see the talent or anything. So I just need to. I think I just need to watch more fights of him and stuff. So I think Burns is a perfect name. I know he's kind of been sliding recently. He's getting a little old. Some injuries too, but I think it's at least when Gilbert, a couple years ago was in his prime, it was incredibly hard to have a boring fight with him. So overall, I think this could be a good matchup for both of them. And then the last thing I'll say is this is what main events should look like on fight nights. This is kind of getting back to how it was a couple years ago. Like, this is a perfect main event, give or take. Hopefully they build the card out a little bit, but can never hate on this being on a Saturday night.
No, absolutely. It's going to be a fun one. And I mean, these are the last two guys the title challenger Bilal Muhammad fought and beat. He beat Sean Brady, then he beat Gilbert Burns. So these guys have some tape in that aspect, or they've just recently faced the same guy, and makes it intriguing. Love to see Gilbert get back in the win column. He lost last two, lost to Jack Della Maddalena after that Bilal Muhammad fight. Then yeah, Sean Brady, that Muhammad loss was his only loss of his career. So he can beat tough guys, and he has done that before in multiple different ways.
Yeah, I love this fight. And you have Gilbert Burns, who is one of the most credentialed BJJ practitioners in the UFC, period. Regardless of division, gender, like accomplishments outside of UFC, Gilbert Burns is right up there with having the most of them. Versus Sean Brady, who is has legit jiu-jitsu. And I'm interested to see whether that results in a ton of grappling exchanges or whether that results in Gilbert defending takedowns and trying to take his head off on the feet. So I'm interested to see how that plays out. And I'm interested to see how Sean Brady, who I don't think this is a very good stylistic matchup for Sean Brady, defend the takedowns and strike with you. But that being said, can you overcome that? Can you go out there and can you show better striking than you have previously? Or can you go out there and beat Gilbert Burns in grappling exchanges? Because if you beat Gilbert Burns in grappling exchanges, I mean, credit to you. It's not easy. So I think it's a great fight, interesting fight. And Anthony, like you said, I'm never going to complain seeing this as a fight night main event. And I think that is one thing the UFC is starting to do better is that when they go on the road, the main event's legit and they're building the card around it to be a good card. Like when you look at this week's card versus last week's card, you see UFC Louisville, really good main event. And then the rest of the card may not be elite fighters. You're right. Last week didn't have a ton of ranked guys, but it did have really, really solid matchmaking. And you see this week, you've got the main event, and then the rest of the card, the matchmaking's like, whatever. So I think that's the biggest difference is the matchmaking that you see throughout the rest of the card, and hopefully that is the case for this card as well. Because if you give me a card full of like really interesting matchups, regardless of whether they're ranked, unranked, new to the UFC, veterans, as long as it's interesting, I don't really care. You know what I mean? As long as it's interesting. So that's something the UFC does a little bit better when they're on the road, and we'll see if that trend continues. I hope it does.
I missed it. Did they announce where this fight's being held?
No location.
Okay.
No location, so I assume it's on the road.
Good.
Because if it was in the Apex, they probably just would have said,
yeah,
sticking it in the Apex.
And that's one of the fun things. Like we're getting better fights like these. These should not be fights that are in the Apex.
Mm-hmm.
Period.
Yep.
So.
Gilbert Burns is too big to be fighting in the Apex. And they did well in Louisville with Jared Cannonier and Nassourdine Imavov.
How was the atmosphere for like the main card? Was it pretty solid atmosphere there?
Yeah, I thought so. I didn't think it was anything. It wasn't France. It wasn't England, but
for what
it was solid.
The Rosas fight got pretty loud. The Reyes fight got loud, in moments. So it definitely, it's anything's better than an Apex. So, and it's as long as you can feel some atmosphere. That's all that matters.
Lots of booze for the stoppage as well. So
yeah.
Last thing I will add while we're talking about the Apex, they had a WWE event in the Apex, and that's the most fans I've seen in the Apex. I saw that and I was like, "What in the hell is this?"
I saw that as well.
That was absolutely insane. Hopefully they just leave the seats there, and you can fit like they probably had 1,000 more people. Maybe that's an aggressive number, but there was a noticeable more amount of people in the Apex for the WWE event just based off the type of seating they had. So I know they're getting rid of the Apex, thankfully, but Jesus, just leave the WWE seating like they had it.
Yeah. Because
All right.
any atmosphere is better than no atmosphere. So
That is true. All right. Thank you guys for sticking around. Ended up getting quite a bit in today, quite a few fights, quite a few news stories as well. So thank you for sticking through that. Next week, there won't be much to recap with this card as we've kind of touched on when we were previewing it. However, we do have UFC Saudi Arabia to preview next week. And that is a card that the UFC put their work in. So we will have a pretty good slate of fights to talk about next week, headlined by Whitaker and Chimaev in the main event. And then that's a filled out card with some pretty good fights as well. So make sure to tune in next week for that. And for any more UFC Vegas 93 coverage, I will have best bets and previews posted on Friday. And there should hopefully be some news articles up this week as well in the UFC section. So make sure to check out VendettaSportsMedia.com for that. But thank you for listening. We'll catch you next time.